Okay. We're rolling.
Sweet.
All right, so I guess I'll start.
Okay.
We all decided to pick a topic of electric vehicles, but we went with for mass transit. I specifically did some research on trains, and I have some information about the efficiency of trains and how we can change that. But some facts that I have here is in 2014, transportation-related energy accounted for 27% of the world primary energy consumption, produced 34% of the greenhouse gases. And that's for the world. And then the United States was almost the same percentages correlating to that, with responsible for 28% of the US energy used and 34% of the CO2. In China, they used in 2010 280 billion tons of coal for the Chinese rail system or railway.
Wow. That's a lot.
I mean, I don't even know how to conceptualize that, but
yeah.
they
For some trains.
They must have a lot of rails over there.
Yeah.
So I was trying to look up some information on the monorails or the magnetic trains and stuff like that, but I didn't really get to it. I didn't think I had enough time. But there's 3 ways of increasing the efficiency of the trains. Is regenerative brakes, coasting points, which basically is when you think about it, when you drive your car and then you come up to a stop sign, you let the car coast for a while instead of driving it and quickly braking. So you're not using that energy the whole time. But I mean, with that, there's timetables that need to be met. So there's also the third method, which there's algorithms involved with that. So this information says is directional optimize the speed profile, the timetable of the train. Essentially is for more generalized control by applying a variety of sequential control inputs such as acceleration, coasting, cruising, and deceleration. It's basically the same thing except a little more elaborate. That's some of the quick information that I got on trains. You guys have any questions on that?
Well, I was looking up any association with like the new bullet trains that countries are going towards and how sustainable those are. And I really haven't found any hard facts, but I was reading an article where it said that a bullet train in the US would hypothetically be like the foundation of sustainable public transportation, not only in the train itself, but decongesting mass cities from car travel and bus travel, and I think streamlining it through a bullet train that would go cross country. But that's the only. What do you think about?
Do you think it would only revolutionize? Do you think it would only go cross country, or do you think it would replace like the local commuter trains? Because I know here, like outside of New York City, like the train I take takes an hour and 10 minutes, and it's basically a bus on a track, and it's really slow.
Okay.
Like, do you think that'd be like something that they'd be able to even recreate in a short distance rather than just like cross country? Did you see anything on that?
I didn't see anything. I think that there are going to start as train technology probably expands, they're probably going to expand it more, because the trains is not only they separated the trains and the subway system. But if you didn't know, do you guys know how trains actually work? It's actually diesel engines that run generators that make the train move. It's not like a car where you have a direct drive.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So it's actually electric. So there's a diesel engine that runs an electric motor, and that's what moves the cars.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I've always wondered about that because I was always looking at like the lines above the trains, and I'm like, well, obviously it's connected to something too, empowering like
yeah,
the
so
line.
there was some other information on here to let's see, they called it um, um yeah, I don't know. That's it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I looked at the route for the route map for the Japanese bullet train. And I wish I could. I think I can like share my screen with you guys or something. But they're pretty short stops. I mean, some only about 100 miles away. If I can. Whoa. Okay.
What do you guys do your research on?
Oh, I did mine on
Sorry?
buses.
I started with buses. I did see that. Well, I saw that passenger cars they increased. Or passenger transportation grew 130% in the past 40 years. I did see that in one of the
Yeah,
one of the
there
readings.
was a lot on buses. Ooh,
Hey.
cool.
Okay, can you see it? Cool. Yeah, so
Where's that? Where's that? Japan?
yeah, so it's the Shinkansen route map, and it just gives, I guess, the layout of the routes it takes, and it looks like from Tokyo to Yokohama, that's a pretty short distance.
Yeah, and I think that's one of like the really busy stations too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
So
it goes the entire length of.
Are these all bullet trains?
I think this route map is just for this one bullet or the bullet train system. Yeah. So to answer your question earlier, I definitely think it could replace local travel. I mean, if it's feasible for them.
Yeah, I'm sure if we had plenty of money for transportation changes here, we'd probably already have changed.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, which brings me to my fact about buses. They're very expensive. I had no idea, even like regular like public transport buses for a diesel bus is $500,000.
I saw that they only had like 4 miles a gallon or something.
I actually saw that they the fact I got was 380 miles to a full tank of diesel in the average bus, which is why it's making it difficult for some places to want to change to electric buses because some of them take quite a while to charge depending on what style. And what was the other fact?
Did you guys go to Penn State main campus ever?
No.
Never been on campus.
I think they have I think they had natural gas buses there when I used to go there. I went there in 2010 to 2014. So
okay.
I mean, they weren't electric, but I guess in Pennsylvania, the fracking and stuff was a big thing. So the natural gas was pretty easy to get.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that works with the greenhouse gas emissions.
I'm thinking it's probably better, but it's also not like, ideal.
Right, because fracking is not good either. So how do you get the gas?
Yeah. Yeah, I used to live in an area in Pennsylvania that started doing all the fracking and stuff, and yeah, it wasn't the best.
In one of my classes recently, they talked about, I don't even know if it was this class, they talked about, I know it's not mass transit, but it was bicycles in somewhere in Europe where they they made it if you're riding your bicycle like 20 miles an hour or more, gave you all the green lights to go to the center of the city. So they have like this monster bicycle path that they have, so you can use that as transit to go to the city. And they're trying to kind of get out away from using cars so much.
Yeah, I think they're actually having a problem with people biking in London because there's so many people. Like, I know there, because when I was there, everyone was complaining because bicyclists going to like commuting were constantly getting hit by cars because they would travel in such big groups. And
that's what they did in this country. They made whole entire like lanes, protected lanes for these bicyclists.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably somewhere in like the Netherlands or something.
Yeah, I forget where it was. I'd have to look back at it. But yeah, it was pretty cool how they did all that. I think it's the biking capital of the world for like transit. I know we can't really consider that mass transit unless enough people do it. I suppose you could consider it mass transit.
Yeah, and I'm sure then like places that have that probably have like more accessible for handicap, like public transportation for like buses and stuff. Because I know in like some places they only have like room for like one person that has like a wheelchair or something. So I'm sure that would actually work out better for people that are handicapped, because if more people are riding their bikes, there's more room on the buses for more handicapped people.
Oh, it was Copenhagen.
Ah, of course it was.
So that's all I really know. I mean, and some of this stuff was actually a lot of math involved. So I didn't really get that far into reading it. I just, because I knew this was only going to be about 4 minutes each person or ish.
Yeah.
And honestly, some of this stuff was pretty complicated with what they were trying to figure out with the coast times and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it was a bit easier with the buses because they actually I found a few articles like referencing.
I guess it would work the same way with buses though, coasting.
Yeah.
It could work the same way.
Yeah.
Right. You get up to 30 miles an hour and then you let go of the gas and.
Yeah, but I think they're also too trying to figure out how to make the battery life run better in areas where it's like super hot or super cold. Because if they're running the air all the time inside the bus, it like kills the battery really fast.
Oh, the air conditioning, like the air conditioning.
Yeah. So like in the Carolinas where they have like more mild weather, they've actually switched completely to an electric fleet of buses and then like in comparison to like, where was it? Palm Springs, they tried switching, but their buses like, they couldn't get enough miles out of them from like the heat. So now they only can use them. Yeah. So they can only use them for short term. So they spent all that money on the buses and they can only use them for short like destinations.
Well, probably what's best is like the hybrids where it kind of, until technology brings us to the point where we can use batteries for long enough, we'll have to mitigate, have basically a motor that will charge the battery as we're driving or something like that.
Yeah. And I think
but not run all the time.
When I was in Singapore, they had buses that were hybrids, and because they run like 24/7, they would get, I think, the best out of it because of the air conditioning that they needed there. But
I know I've been to Singapore and I know that not everyone can drive. You need to basically be in a lottery to be able to drive a car over there.
And then it's like 150,000 to get a car.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, so it's not that easy to drive a car over there.
Like a wait list to be able to drive.
That's extremely, I don't know how they are green wise, but I know they're physically extremely clean country.
Yeah.
Like you can't spit on the ground or like chew gum.
Yeah, you can't like. Yeah. I think I read that.
But I have to say, they do send all of their trash and everything to Malaysia, so they don't process like almost anything. So for them, I don't think they're super green because they know they could just ship it to like Indonesia and Malaysia.
Oh, okay.
So they're physically like, and like the landscape there is like super organized and clean, but they still still figured out.
Ethically, they're still very,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think those are all my big facts about buses.
Pretty awesome. You guys are talking about like charging the battery as they drive. I mean, Tesla, I can see them. I don't know if they ever will or if we'll soon, but teaming up with like big bus organizations from big city to big city, installing their batteries, or like us investing in solar power on buses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, or like wind power. I know because Hawaii, there's a pretty large public transportation system that travels the entire island on Oahu. There are buses. You can drive anywhere on the island and you'll see a bus. But I mean, you can see the brown smoke coming out the top the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
So they're not green whatsoever. But I can imagine it. I can see it happening in the future and going green.
Well,
so
as technology increases, it just takes time to get to that point. I mean, none of this would have ever been even possible to do just even in the 70s, because I don't even think solar was really even around.
Yeah.
And if it was around, there was no way you could charge any kind of significant battery with it.
And it would have been really expensive, probably. Like, even if you tried plugging something in.
Yeah, so as time goes on and we get better with technology, we'll be able to become more greener, but it's kind of a tit for tat. We got to get there sooner rather than later because of the greenhouse gases affecting the environment.
Yeah, and hopefully the cost comes down too. So that way more.
You said, Mona, right? You said something earlier when we weren't on the video about like 2040?
2050. So I think early 2000s, especially when Obama was in his presidency, they started making these benchmarks because they started to recognize how immediate the consequences would be from climate change. So there were, I think, 2 benchmarks really thrown around. It was like 2035 and 2050. And we're approaching 2035 fairly quickly with not a lot of progress. So I think everyone's going further down the timeline, and a lot of people are just talking about, can we at least not necessarily reverse, but can we equal out the effects of climate change by 2050? And my topic actually with BP and Delta going quote unquote carbon neutral, they're talking about 2050. So Delta pledged a $1 billion plan to go carbon neutral by 2050 with their airline.
Who did?
Delta Airlines.
Oh, okay.
So they did that by 2 things. They said there are 2 methods, which, I mean, quote unquote, right? It's like BP oil companies saying they're going to go carbon neutral. You guys are kind of the problem, but 2 methods. They're talking about replanting forests. So basically creating the big carbon sinks, right? And then they're also talking about installing a very expensive system on each of their planes that actually, while in flight, sucks carbon dioxide out of the air and then spits out fresh oxygen after it's cleansed. I don't really know what to call it. I haven't looked at the process, but it's a giant plant.
That sounds a little too good to be true.
That's
right, like a metal plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like how was it Volkswagen said they spoofed their cars.
Yeah.
With fake mileage, but so yeah, that's their pledge. And I have a source because we all have to have those sources. NPR did a 3-minute listen. I can send you guys the link and I'll put it on the short summary. But Camilla Demonsky and Scott Simon, they're talking about it. And yeah, I mean the nature of the talk, the language, it's kind of like very skeptical. They're talking about, what is this just their nomenclature to say, oh, hey, we're trying to go green to keep their customers, or is this a reality? So yeah, I can dig deeper, but it's a pretty long article. But in short, that's what that's a form of mass transportation for sure. And the only feasible one, right, to cross the big ponds that we have. So
yeah,
it's being talked about at least.
I mean, I think air transportation is probably the most difficult of the ones because there's so many factors that are important, you know? There's like, obviously there's people's lives that are like, I'm not saying it's more important than cars, but like if your car shuts off, it's not that big of a deal. But if the plane engine shuts off, it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's pretty spooky stuff.
You know, and then whatever those new technologies, it has to meet certain weight requirements, and then it also has to meet all these efficiency requirements. You know, you can't have a monster heavy thing. I don't know how heavy whatever this new stuff is going to weigh. But I would think that the plane stuff would be the most difficult to make happen.
Yeah, especially at like a mass scale and not just for like one specialty kind of small plane.
Well, I know it's not being talked about a lot, but at least in the military, it's kind of not a coincidence completely because the Space Force was just, you know, made into a thing, and that's actually being looked at by officials. They're talking about putting leadership in and actually bases and stuff like that. Hyperspeed air travel is definitely a topic amongst the world leaders that us average Americans and consumers and citizens aren't really in on the discussion. It's like Tesla, NASA, they're in talks of how are we going to install not only hyperspeed air travel to go from country to country, traveling tens of thousands of miles, but from like places like Earth to the moon. Because that's really what, you know, fortunately and unfortunately, space travel is being looked at as a serious and viable option for mass air travel, even though we have some more pressing issues with sustainability and climate change. Space air travel is, that's a big topic. So
maybe when they get to that point and they start creating things, they'll come up with, you know, new options for other things, like they did when they went to the moon, and they created all these new technologies that weren't available before then. So maybe we'll
that would be cool. They had high-speed air travel. They had the Concorde, and I don't know. I don't know what happened with that, but I guess it wasn't cost-effective to have it or use it, or because they had it in like the 70s. I think it came out in the 70s, maybe in the 80s, and then they stopped using it somewhere in like the late 90s, I think.
Oh yeah, it's the
it was that weird looking plane where it has like
powered.
It's got like a tilt down.
Yeah. Supersonic. It's like a very futuristic name. Supersonic passenger airline that was operated until 2003. It had a maximum speed over twice the speed of sound.
Yeah, so I'm not too versed on. I don't know why it didn't work. I would assume obviously it's definitely got to be cost, because if it made much money, it would keep using it.
Maybe they stopped using it and decided to wait until technology kind of advanced.
There was a crash.
Ooh.
They retired the airframe because they did operate it at a profit despite the maintenance costs. There was a crash in the year 2000 of Air France flight 4590, in which all passengers and crew were killed.
That's
so I think that shut that down pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, besides the tragedy that happened with it. So maybe they're working on it. They're just not talking about it because it's a soft spot or sore subject. But
all right, well, I think we've hit our time, probably.
I think we're actually, I think I said it, 22 minutes.
Sweet. Extra credit.
I guess we could submit 22 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You want me to stop the recording?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. See you guys later.
Bye.